Making film and television projects centered around villains has become quite popular in recent years. We've seen Sony make numerous movies starring Spider-Man bad guys, most of which having crashed and burned in epic fashion. We've also seen Joaquin Phoenix star in 2 films that put the Joker front and center. Even series like The Acolyte and Agatha All Along presented us with primarily villainous main characters. And I think this massive uptick in the number of creative projects headed by somewhat evil characters has started to blur the lines between hero and villain, because a lot of these projects try and morph these antagonists into just morally questionable individuals who you can kind of sympathize with despite the fact that you know they aren't necessarily good guys. Typically they do this through implementing sad and at times relatable backstories, and this can certainly work in some instances, but I think the art of making a movie or show where you're not supposed to like the main character is becoming somewhat of a lost art. I mean, if you really think about it, arguably the 2 greatest shows of all time in Breaking Bad and The Sopranos are headed by characters that are kind of evil and that you're not supposed to root for by the end of things. And for me, the Penguin series really captured everything I used to love about content centered around evil characters. Oswald Cobblepot is a piece of shit. Plain and simple, he's a psychopath who is willing to do anything for money, power, and to survive. And most of the people he is combating throughout the series operate in a similar fashion. The Maronis and Falcones both want the same thing as Cobblepot, to have control of Gotham's underworld, and the boatload of cash that will come with it. And seeing the power struggle between these 3 forces was quite engaging, not because any of these groups are that likable, but rather because it was intricately written with a bunch of twists and bumps in the road that kept things unpredictable and super thrilling. Which is perfect because at the end of the day, the end goal that all of these forces have is corrupt and greedy. And while it was really entertaining to see all of this unfold, I think it was key for this show to make it very clear that we shouldn't like any of the people involved. Except for Victor, that is. I thought Victor was a pretty lovable underdog throughout the series, and even though he does get dragged down into a life of crime, thanks to the Penguin in large part, it just always felt like Vic's heart was mostly in the right place. And the addition of Victor was perfect for the show because it allows you to potentially root for the Penguin to come out on top without needing to like Oswald in any way, shape, or form, because the Penguin winning this struggle for the control of Gotham's underbelly meant that Victor would also be in a good position. Or so we thought. Because just when you think Oz couldn't become any more reprehensible as a human being, he kills Victor. And he does it because he's grown to love him. Victor saved Penguin's ass numerous times. He would not be alive, let alone on top of Gotham's underworld, if it weren't for Victor. And yet, he just strangles him to death. The Penguin views loving something as a weakness, and before he allowed someone to use his love for Victor against him, he killed Vic himself. Strangling Victor was the Penguin's way of strangling his own insecurities. And this was the best way to end the show. It establishes that the Penguin is the new kingpin of Gotham, and it also solidifies how much of a fucking degenerate he is. And the thing that I found to be the most impressive in terms of this moment between Victor and Oswald was that it shocked me. I couldn't believe what Oz was doing, which I think is the ultimate testament to this show's writing. Because it really shouldn't have been a surprise that he was willing to do something like this. We watched this man literally lock his brothers in a sewer so that they would drown to death. And even when Sophia threatened to cut his mother's finger off, he still wouldn't admit he killed his brothers. So of course this twisted fuck would be willing to kill Victor, but I'll be damned if the scene still didn't make my jaw drop to the floor. In many ways it reminded me of when Tony killed Christopher or when Walt poisoned Brock. Based on what these characters had done previously, their actions in these moments shouldn't have been that surprising. But all 3 of these scenes left us shocked all the same. And whenever you can be compared to the likes of Breaking Bad or The Sopranos, you're certainly doing something right. Going forward, I think this show has set the Penguin up to be a really great villain in future Batman outings, because in The Batman, Oswald is kind of just a grimy, corrupt mobster. He's obviously not a good guy, but he's also not the top of the ladder, so he's a pretty intermediate level bad guy, all things considered. But now, especially after seeing him do our boy Victor like that, we'll truly be rooting for Batman to not just put a stop to the corruption in his city, but to put a stop to the Penguin specifically. I think I speak for most when I say that I'd like to see the Penguin suffer for his actions, and I'm looking forward to Batman bringing down the hammer of justice upon Oswald Cobblepot. Drifting away from our main character, I think this show also provided us with another great antagonist in the form of Sophia. And I know some people were complaining that it at times felt like the Sophia show and not the Penguin, but when you have this many interesting characters at play, it shouldn't just be a Penguin showcase in my opinion, and getting to see Sophia go from an innocent child of a murderer into the depths of insanity was such a sad but really interesting journey. You want to root for her at first because her father and entire family really did her dirty, and she by no means deserved the psychological torment she received in Arkham, but at the end of the day, she did ultimately become the thing she hated the most, that being her father. You see, her father wanted her to take over the reins of their mob family when he was gone, but after learning that she talked to a reporter, he pinned her for a bunch of murders that he actually committed, and while it was a rather unconventional way of getting to be the head of the family, Sophia eventually does take over the reins, but she does it by killing almost all of her remaining family members. And when she looks Gia in the eyes and tells her young cousin that she in fact didn't kill all of their family, Sophia deep down knows that she's become her father. Just as her father once looked her in the eyes and lied about killing Sophia's mother, Sophia is now looking Gia in the eyes and lying about having killed her parents. And again, this is so great because it's tragic, but it doesn't pull any punches. The show doesn't try and present Sophia as a hero or anti-hero, even despite her tragic backstory. The show lets us see her for the villain she's become. And this, along with Oswald's portrayal throughout the series, really stood out to me, because this is one of the very few times in recent memory that I've been able to watch a show full of villains, and A, just enjoy the chaos without having the show try to convince me that these aren't bad guys and are really just misunderstood people, and B, watch a conflict where both sides are precisely the same. Now, I say that both sides are the same because when Sophia has Oswald tied up, as I mentioned before, he refuses to look his mom in the eyes and admit to killing his brothers. And I think Sophia trying to force Oz to do this is her way of lashing out. Deep down, she's upset with herself for not being able to look Gia in the eyes and tell her the truth. And seeing the Penguin do the same thing Sophia did, and the same as her father before her, really establishes that the Gotham underworld is a landscape with no heroes. None exist in this show, and that's what makes it so damn good. Well, if you made it this far, please let me know in the comments, what were your thoughts on the Penguin series? Did you love it like I did? Or did you perhaps think it was too dark and bleak? If you did make it this far, thank you for watching, and please feel free to check out some other Screen Stories content. I've done quite a few Batman-themed videos, so you might just find something you like. Until next time, peace.